Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for all the attendees attending the Ahoy Comics panel. I'm Jordan Green. It's Matt Scrivo, and we are with three members of the Ahoy Comics team. Tom Peyer, I hope I'm saying that correctly, Frank Cammuso, and Hart Seely. Each working on Ahoy Comics for a few years now, and hopefully can share some of their stories. We have a few questions that Matt and I wrote up for you guys that we can get started. Obviously, want to hear a lot of stories about you guys, so doing our research, we saw that the Ahoy Comics team is full of people from many different backgrounds. That must create some incredibly unique stories. So can you guys tell us a story about how you all met?
It goes back so far. Well,
yeah, a long time ago.
To jump in, I met Peyer at a party, of course, and was immediately captivated by his stunning wit and elegant charm. That's a joke, of course. Frank and I met at the Syracuse newspapers, where we both devoted vast decades of our life, lost decades.
Wasted decades?
Wasted would be the opportunity. Yeah.
Let's say you guys found your home in the creation of comics, all coming together to create some incredible work.
Thanks.
Matt, hand it off to you.
Awesome. So where did the name, I understand that there is a history behind the name Ahoy. That's it's pretty funny. Do you guys want to share the story of that? I thought that was a very funny story. I kind of want to hear it from the horse's mouth, though.
Well, shall I start on this? I have a background in radio, so I sense dead air and always fill it. These guys are always giving me a hard time over that. But in a nutshell, when I was in college, 1974, Hobart College, we had what we called the Asshole of the Year vote. And that translated into a party. And at the party, we all took a ballot and voted for the Asshole of the Year, who that year was Richard Milhouse Nixon. And over the years, we just kept doing it and doing it. And a long time ago, Peyer and I started embracing it in ways that it hadn't been done before. And we turned it into basically a nationwide poll that at a certain point had so many people voting, a couple thousand, that we couldn't maintain it. Anyway, Ahoy stands for Asshole of the Year. You guys want to take over for me?
No, that's pretty much it. I mean, well, Frank and I used to help Hart with like the ballots and the invitations and stuff for Ahoy. And so we were all pretty involved in it. We were trying to brainstorm a name for the company. And I think it was Frank who said, Ahoy. And there was no more discussion after that. Right. Because it was such a part of our lives for so long.
Yeah, I think we had discussed, we were thinking of like what are big comic names, and I think I had said like I was thinking Titanic,
Yes.
Like I was thinking Titanic comics, and once it went to a Titanic, my mind immediately went to Ahoy, because I mean the history was so large with that word in Seely that I was like, Ahoy, and it was just and it basically, as soon as I said that, as Tom said, didn't matter what else we could have come up with. That was going to be the name of the company. So
right, we didn't want a good name.
We spent about
Alpha, beginning of the phone book. Yeah. If you look up Ahoy in the phone book, A is right there. It's the beginning of the phone book, and everybody uses phone books nowadays.
Everybody uses the phone book. So we get a lot of calls.
We do. It's Roz is always answering the phone. Hello, Ahoy Comics. How can I direct your call? She's always doing that.
She is.
And we spent a considerable period of time trying to come up with acronyms that would justify Ahoy, so that if somebody asked, we could say it stands for a house of yarns or something like that. We had everybody involved with Ahoy coming up with acronyms so that that would be the reason for Ahoy. And we never came up with anything.
Then we decided to tell the truth.
I know. That was a big mistake. It always is a mistake. Never do that. I mean,
we had a little contest in the letter pages to get, if people could, we would ask people to guess what it stood for. And if someone got one word, then, we would print their name. And it was like, I think the first person guessed of.
Mm-hmm.
And,
but it was a tough thing to keep going because everybody in Syracuse, New York knew what it stood for.
What it stood for.
Right. But the person who guessed wasn't,
right,
a Syracusan.
Well, the Syracusans took a vow of silence. That was basically tied.
I have never seen a community come together with such discipline.
They were wearing masks. There was no pandemic. It was 3 years ago.
They were doing it anyway.
Yeah, no, I definitely, when I heard Ahoy, I'm like, oh, pirates?
Exactly. Exactly.
But no, it's definitely something incredibly unique. I know it's something that when I heard the name, I'm like, well, it definitely rolls off the tongue pretty well. So
the definition of Ahoy in the dictionary is a call from afar. So that's actually sort of a nice little way of looking at that as a comic book title.
Yeah,
we're seafaring guys.
Yep.
Webster's defines Ahoy as, and in conclusion, Ahoy is a land of contrasts. Okay.
Jordan, you want to? I think you got another question. Yours is.
Yeah. No, we want to leave room for you guys to have as many important stories and discussion as possible. But we do have a handful of questions prepared.
Sure.
We also do want to mention that we did have a lot of these questions also designed with Jamal Eigel coming in, because I know, Tom, you and him go pretty far back.
Jamal couldn't make it. He had a family thing today.
Of course, that always comes first. But it would have been awesome to have him around to hear multiple stories, working at bigger publishers like Marvel and DC, compared to much smaller ones like what you guys have. But we're going to skip that question for now and talk about the comic style. So Ahoy Comics can have an interesting coloring, with much of the art being extremely vibrant. How important is coloring to this witty and often humorous work you're attempting to put out there?
It's so important that we're putting out a black and white comic next month.
Really? Yeah.
But no, coloring is hugely important. Coloring is hugely important and beautiful, and the colorists we work with are among the best in the business.
Right.
And
we have not skimped at all.
We use all the colors. That's it.
Use all the colors.
It's not like we're just using green and red. Sometimes Hart has spared no expense.
They say mushroom. Purple. I give them mushroom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Peach. We can have peach.
I give them peach.
Blue.
I have to go to the checkbook a little bit. They'll come in there and they'll say puce. I don't know what puce is. Nobody knows what puce is. But I say, you want puce? Go for it.
Sometimes I make up a color and ask him for it, and I pocket the money.
I figured you were doing that.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of this chemistry you guys have.
Yeah, I did, but the coloring, I know you guys are joking, but I did notice it does. Ahoy Comics, compared to even some newer comics, I think it definitely goes with your style. Or they have this kind of grittier, darker, kind of color style to them, and it to me it's sort of, I get what they're going for, but it's almost sort of puzzling that you have a medium like comics where you can explore with different colors and you can use kind of what's on the page to pop out at the viewer, and it does sometimes baffle me that a lot of these modern day comics kind of choose to go, and like you said, you guys are making a black and white comic, but that's sort of, I appreciate the stylized nature of that. I think that Ahoy Comics, just as an outside observer, they really do pop out at you more than a lot of other modern day comics.
Oh, cool. Thanks. Yeah. It depends on the story too. You want it to fit the story.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to mention that. So flying down, I'm actually at a family wedding, but I brought the comics along. So I was given The Wrong Earth, first volume, by one of our classmates, and I read through all of it yesterday, and I have to say I was incredibly impressed. And just while we're talking about the color style, outright describing one of the separate Earths as gritty, disgusting, corrupt, dark, and you see it in the colors that are reflected on the pages, and then you see one that's much more vibrant, much more upbeat. much more easygoing, and those colors are much more orange. Like you can actually see the sun, unlike we can actually do in like the upstate New York area most of the year. But no, I definitely noticed that immediately looking at it and being like, wow, like there's a clear distinction between the different places on different versions of Earth. I don't want to like spoil for people who have yet to read the comics, but one being much grittier, much darker, and one being much more optimistic and much brighter.
Well, it was Jamal's idea. We put a red filter on Earth Omega, a 15% red filter, and it just changed everything. It looks like a completely different atmosphere. It looks like the air smells different on both planets because of that. It was a great choice.
Yeah, I think the color choice and just the drawing in general is really good. I think you guys.
You know, we're really proud. We're really proud of those kinds of books that we do feel stick right out, because we're a really tiny comic book company, and we have only one path to success, and that is to create comic books that actually just stand out from the others. You know, Marvel and DC, God bless them, they can turn out anything, and if it's got Superman or Batman in it, it's going to get a certain amount of attention, and good for them. We don't have that. Everything we do has to build a base right from the get-go, and colors are a perfect way to lasso people in.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And then kind of along that, I've got another question. Your comics are so unique, and they are kind of, I'm giving you guys a lot of compliments here, but I really do mean them. They are kind of different from a lot of comics that I read kind of now. Where do you guys draw a lot of influence from? This could even be in terms of writing, in terms of the coloration, because it seems like you guys are you're drawing influences from, you know, kind of standard Marvel, DC. You know, they paved the way for a lot of modern comics. But I also see some sort of, because they're more humorous, some of them, because they have the wit, almost kind of reminds me of like reading Mad Magazine or something. Where do you guys think you draw influences in, and how do you kind of bring those influences together to make the product you guys have presented us with?
Mad Magazine.
Definitely.
One of our
Mad Magazine.
One of our short story writers is the former editor at Mad Magazine.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, John Ficarra.
Yeah.
Yeah, every comic book I've ever read is like an influence, it feels like sometimes, you know. But like the black and white thing we're doing, Mad used to be in black and white. There used to be these magazines called Creepy and Eerie that had really magnificent art in black and white. So that's like a reason to do that. And just whatever's, you know, you think back over your life and you remember comics that made you feel good and comics that made you feel bad. So
yeah,
we try to pick the ones that made us feel good.
Well, and I think the opportunity that we have too is because we're a small house, we can also really make sure every comic kind of has its own, Matt, you were talking about color, and color is really it is often a very overlooked tool in storytelling. So, I mean, like Hart said, we don't have, Superman and Batman and, Spider-Man. So we have to use everything to make this, this comic kind of really feel like its own world and its own package, so when you're picking it up, it's the Wrong Earth world, or it's, or it's a Second Coming, or Captain Ginger, or any of our books, they all feel different, like a Marvel comic, you pick it up, it's like, they all feel like they're the Marvel universe. We can kind of create these own little ones because we're a little more flexible and we're a little more agile. We can do some different stuff. So each book can be its own. It can feel a little different, like this white book we have coming out is going to feel completely different than the other books we have, but it's a different world, it's going to be, it's more horror based. And so it's like it's urban horror, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
It's, yeah.
So
Definitely wanted to go off of what you guys were talking about, some of your inspirations. Do you remember what the first comic that you all read was?
Hart?
Not to make you think like very far back.
Oh, my first comics were Casper the Friendly Ghost. When I was probably 12 years old, playing Little League and going down to a small corner store in my hometown on Tuesdays when the comics came in with Casper and Wendy and the Ghostly Trio and those things. I mean, so I was reading comics early in my life, long before Superman ever appeared on my wavelength. But Tom, you go back to birth, right? When you were born, you had a comic book in your hand.
I was born with a comic book in my, rolled up and stuck in the back of my diaper, yes. Or a comic book in my hand.
Didn't they?
Yeah. No, I think I was about 5 or 6 when I started reading comics. Because Superman was on TV. He was on TV every day. So, and it was like, black and white and cheap looking. But if you're 5, it looked amazing. It looked like it would give you the feelings that people say religious art gives them. And so that sort of ruined my life, that TV show.
Yeah, my first comic was Amazing Spider-Man 126, and it's I think it's 126. It's the issue where Spider-Man's smashing in on he's having a fight with Man-Wolf, is it Man-Wolf?
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah.
And J. Jonah Jameson's in the foreground. He's on the phone. He's like, "Somebody help me!" My son is a werewolf or something like that. And it's just crazy. Yeah. So it's that. And to me, that just blew my mind. That I was just like, it's Spider-Man. It's a werewolf. It's this guy's son. It's like, what?
Yeah.
All these all these connections, and just, I guess I had seen Superman and Batman on TV, but those Bronze Age comic books were just, they had these really acidic colors, and you're talking about colors again, and they were just all those early 70s comics, so especially the Marvel ones, were just, the colors were just so over the top, and they're so vibrant, and I don't know, it was something that spoke to me. And then I also got, I think with it, I got, maybe there was like a War of the Worlds one with Killraven, which was really strange. I mean,
really strange.
Yeah. And then I followed up with like a Captain Marvel, like the Marvel, not like Shazam, but like this other one. And that was really weird. That was like a Jim Starlin one.
So you guys both started with superheroes then, right? You
Yep.
didn't have that that little pre-elementary school comic.
Peanuts. I had Peanuts. I mean,
I read everything. I read Casper. I read everything.
I wanted to do a strip. I really wanted to draw a comic strip. But by the time I got to about the time I was able to do it, comics were dying. I mean, newspapers were dying. I was a political cartoonist, and and that train was going nowhere. And and this, and it was like, why hit your why hit your car to a train that's going nowhere? And that's what comic strips were.
I think honestly, I appreciate that you brought up Casper and political cartoons and all that, because it is sort of, I do see that with your comics. It does kind of infuse stuff that might not necessarily have impacted other people in a certain way, and it kind of mixes together with this Amazing Spider-Man and the old TV Superman kind of melodrama. I think those mix together in such a unique way that it kind of gives you the product that you have now. So
we're small enough and we're unknown enough to be able to do whatever the hell we want.
You want, exactly.
Right.
And
it's true, because no one has any preconceived notions of what we should be.
Yeah.
I mean, no one's expecting like, oh, you know what, AHOY Comics are always like this. And it's like,
right.
No.
And we can't destroy a character or an entity or a big money proposal. We have no Superman that we can destroy or anything like that.
What was it like for you guys in the year 2018? At this point, the comics boom. There's sort of a kind of wave of geekdom now. It's kind of cool to be a geek. A lot of people are on board, and a lot of people are writing comics now. Probably more so than ever. What was it like getting into the comic industry in 2018? It was definitely very competitive, very cutthroat. How do you guys think that this kind of unique style that you guys blended together, how do you think that, getting into comics in the year 2018 kind of impacted the product that you've presented today?
Well, in 2018, we had one absolutely critical event, and that was the day that we were accepted by Diamond Comic Book Distributorship. Now, Diamond runs the entire industry, or at least it used to. And in 2018, it certainly did. And we sent a delegation down, 2 people to put on a pitch, and Diamond accepted us, so that we basically got to have our works distributed nationwide. And if they hadn't accepted us, I don't know what we'd done. I mean, as it was, they loved us from the get-go, but that was huge. And everything we had done for, in essence, 8 to 12 months beforehand was an attempt to win that one-day battle and get accepted by Diamond. And so there was a lot of stress. And Tom is the managing editor, and he basically put together all those books, and Frank is the creative designer, and basically I do all the crap that nobody else wants to do. But it was one day that we got in, and that was huge. Until then, we were nothing, and we had no hope.
It was really huge, and we came in knowing nothing. Like, our ignorance was.
Mm-hmm.
Our ignorance was our armor. If we had any idea how hard this was going to be, mm-hmm. we would have run away screaming. But we had people. We were able to attract people who knew what they were doing. Like Stuart Moore was essential in getting us into Diamond, and we had a great publicist named David Hyde, and we had a great designer.
None of them, though, just dropped out of the sky. We had, if we had known all of the crapola that we were going to have to run through and do back when we were just starting this, I don't think we'd have tried. I think we'd have been too afraid. We'd have turned away. Putting together a company in this day and age, all the legalities and all the crossed T's and dotted I's, and the insurance, all of the things you have to put together are phenomenal. And we have a payroll now. We have about 8 people in essence who put out a tremendous amount of work, and we're really proud of that. We may not grow. I don't know whether we want to grow. But we feel really positive about the books we're putting out, and as long as that's the feeling we have, then we're gonna do all right.
Awesome. Well, I definitely wanted to ask, but speaking of like the books you guys have put out, I know Tom worked on the first Edgar Allan Poe Snifter of Blood comic, and I just wanted to ask, like, specifically to Tom about that. So, you were one of the lead writers for that, and like, what gave you the idea to design a comic based on a major historical figure like Edgar Allan Poe?
Because he was, people like him, people like horror stories, because he is dead and couldn't do anything about it. Everybody knows his face, and we don't have to pay anyone to use it. And we don't have to add, he can't call us and say, no, you can't do this with my likeness. And so it's really a perfect relationship. We get whatever we want, and he gets nothing.
Yeah, I heard I just like I saw that I'm like I am the history person. It was my favorite class in high school. I've taken some classes in college that are history related. When I saw Edgar Allan Poe, I'm like, well, I know this guy, and I know he's already The Raven and multiple other short stories. When I saw that you guys had a comic, it was even more horror designed around him. I was fascinated, so I wanted to ask about that, Tom.
We mock him too, like mercilessly. There's nothing he can do.
Comedy is always something good to add in. Well, it's definitely. So you worked on the first one. I know you haven't been like the main story person on the last few, but when did you know that you had a major hit on your hands?
When did I know I had a major hit on my hands? I just wanted it to be a good comic, and most of the time it is. I think we have different people every issue. I think the quality has mostly stayed really high.
Awesome.
Appreciate that.
Just to answer that question, I think the first time we realized we really had something going was when we had various writers contact us with proposals. Like, for example, a fellow by the name of Paul Cornell, a British writer who is very well known for having written a couple seasons of Doctor Who, which is, you would say, at the pinnacle of all fantasy science fiction writing. And he's done some Poe stories for us. And, people out of the blue from far distance locations have seen that book and said, hey, I've got an idea. And that's always really neat.
That is great. And that's when Mark Russell started working with us. And he wrote Second Coming and Billionaire Island. So that was huge.
I also wanted to ask you guys, kind of along the lines of the Edgar Allan Poe question. You guys have now, for those who are watching who might not know this, older comics, in order to kind of scoot around some fees and regulations, used to include like a little bit of prose at the beginning, because it would allow them to reclassify what they were selling. You guys also in your comics include prose, kind of a little callback to older comics that used to do that. And I thought that was really interesting, and I wanted to hear about your decision to include that in there.
Yeah, they did that originally. Later letter pages served the same purpose, but they did it originally because you needed prose, you needed text in a magazine for it to get cheap postal rates. Comics wouldn't do it. So, if you had a lot of subscribers back then, you wanted the mailing to be as cheap as possible. But so they would hire somebody for as little money as possible to write a story as fast as possible. And I've started reading 100 of these, and I don't think I ever finished one. They're really terrible. So, although Mickey Spillane, who was a famous author, did some, and Stan Lee's first published story was a prose Captain America story. And but anyway, we were looking at these, and we just thought, what if these were good? That might be something for us.
Yeah.
So now we have 2-3 short stories, and maybe once in a while some poems. A couple times we had crossword puzzles. The idea is to just, if you buy one of our comic books, we want it to take you through your whole lunch hour. It doesn't have to be finished in 5 minutes or 10 minutes. So this is like a meaty thing. You can just sort of spend some time with. That's what we want.
Plus we tapped into short stories, which I think people have been predicting the death of in American literature for as long as I've been alive. And one of the problems with short stories is that they are long. They're not short anymore. And we said we want short stories, 700 words, 500 words, maybe 1,500 words at the most. And, our view is that in America, political campaigns, baseball games, and short stories had all gotten too long. And so we wanted short stories with a snap, either very funny or a twist at the end. Short stories that somebody could read and get a good little mouthful to chew on and take 15 minutes and not have to sit down and read it over the span of a month. We felt as though those short stories made our books better than any other books out there because they just something extra, something extra.
Yeah, I hope there's a feeling of like generosity that comes across when you have one of our books. There's just a lot in there.
Mm-hmm.
And so.
Yeah, Frank, do you have any thoughts on that, or do you want to move on?
No, I mean they've covered it all. I mean it's you know it was, we were looking for a way to stand out. You know, we were looking for something to make us different, to you know, something that people weren't doing anymore. You know, and that was, you know, that was one of the things. So.
Yeah, when I was reading The Wrong Earth yesterday, and I finished volume 1, but then there were the short stories as you guys mentioned at the end, and I kind of surprised with how quickly they ended. But they gave, as you guys said, like very quick, no more than like 15-minute time spent on it resolutions, and fantastic stories that finish up very quickly, that have a very very immediate beginning and end. There's definitely a lot in there, packed in with an already amazing comic that people can definitely read and get into. And I appreciate Patrick for dropping them off, because I was fascinated. After on my flight, there was no outlets, so I was like low on phone battery and stuff like that. I'm like, well, thank God I brought these comics. So I read the entire comic, and on 2 flights down to Dallas. But yeah, no, I was fascinated, and I also have Billionaire Island still in the plastic that he gave me it. So I don't want to rip that open too quickly.
That's a terrific Mark
Wesson
story.
Well, definitely wanted to ask specifically for Frank and Hart, coming from print journalism and now going into the comic medium space, how has that been different, and what has that been like?
Well, let me tell you, we both saw a dying quail, basically. I've said this before, and so both Tom and Frank will fog out while I go into this, but print media right now is a dying breed. And it's really a bad time to be publishing anything. But what it is a great time to be involved in the creation of stories. It's a great time to be a storyteller. And that is what we try to sell, stories. They go on a lot of different levels, and they have a lifespan that you never know when you tell a story, what it's going to evolve into later on. And that's what we're doing. Every time we publish a book, we're buying a lottery ticket for the possibility of something that will affect American society in ways we can't begin to even imagine. But these books are all seedlings. That sounds horrible. I can't say seedlings. I mean, that's ridiculous. But these books are that. We're taking chances on these books, really crazy, off the beaten path, and who knows what finality they will find, where they will be at the end.
I love books as objects. I love print. I love the feel of it. I mean, I'm older, so I don't read a lot on the iPad or on my phone. And I think if I did, it's going to be like everything else. If I get a little bored, I'm going to jump to something else and just abandon the story or abandon what I'm reading. And that's what I like about print, is if you're with it, you have to stick with it. And it delivers, and it's just right.
If you're bored, too bad.
Exactly. Well, but but the thing is, I think it doesn't. People don't develop patience for a story to build. I mean, it's like, I feel with the internet, like things have to hit you right away, and everything has to be like immediate, and I think with print, it's a little more, it's a building thing, and because you're sticking with it, you're like, it's just you in the book. You can't tap it. It doesn't do anything. You're kind of, it's a real personal thing. It's just you in the book. So I don't know. I've always loved print. I love the way it looks. I love the way it feels. I love the way the ink looks. I love it when it screws up, it's just, but yeah. And I worry that, that aesthetic is going to be gone in a few years. You're already starting to see the aesthetic of bad screens, right? There are some filters now that you can get on TikTok and stuff, which have like, the color out, the RGB color kind of, almost out of register, and a little bit of snow. So there's always, it's interesting how that aesthetic of the medium not being correct is permeating. But I love when comics are bad. I love an out of registered Captain Marvel comic.
Frank did a great story in the back of that Wrong Earth book with Stinger. It looks like a 1940s story, and you can see like the other page bleeding through.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's great.
Yeah.
I used to, about this journalism versus comics thing, there's something I used to say to Hart all the time when he was a reporter, which is that comics and journalism and newspapers are so similar. You've got deadlines, and you've got the print medium, and you've got writing and stuff. And the only real difference is that comic books have to be accurate.
But we have.
You used to get really mad.
We have to spell right. We have to spell right. You guys in comics, you can have the whack, THWAKKK, when it should be spelled THWACK, right?
Well, you better not be showing Green Arrow's kid partner during the 6 months when he's dead.
Yeah.
But in newspapers, you can do that.
Exactly.
I think the thing that freed me up mostly with comics was, and this is just in general, but Art Spiegelman once said to me, comics are supposed to be bad, and a little bad. And once he said that to me, I was like, holy shit, he's so right. Because they're not meant to, like, it's not the Mona Lisa. You don't sit there and stare at it for hours. You're just blowing through it. You're basically moving it along. And once I found that out, I didn't stress so much about how good these drawings were, because it just had to keep you in the story and move it along. If it did that, it was fine. And it changed my life. I mean, just like that thing that something it was okay for something to be bad. And because it was almost because, comics had to come out on a deadline. They were almost had to be bad because it was the only way they're going to get done.
Yeah.
Almost expected. It's almost like a greasy burger, right? You want the greasy burger. You're like, oh, I'm craving that greasy burger. I know it's not good for me, but it's so delicious,
Yeah.
That's what a good comic is, a greasy burger.
I definitely think that's a good example of kind of fast food. Comics are sort of fast food, and there's nothing really. I think that as technology advances and as sort of materials that were formerly hard to get a hold of become easier to get a hold of. You mentioned like the TikTokers using the like RGB screen and 4:3 aspect ratio kind of becoming like people using that more. I definitely think like you see a lot of these like big CG Godzilla movies, and I think there is such a market for like a kind of live action but completely practical version of that. And I think that's what AHOY kind of is. I think that it is the kind of comics, the practical version of comics. I do feel like I'm reading comics that they're aware, they know what they're doing. It's smart satire. It's almost like Starship Troopers, right?
Right. Very interesting.
You guys understand what you're doing. I think that's great. So I think where we can go next is what's on the horizon for AHOY. Where do you guys want to take this? Because you guys are doing a great job of kind of, being original, and everything you guys are doing is you're kind of pumping more originality and kind of new ways to kind of cut the edge. So I want to know where do you guys see AHOY going from here? What do you think is coming up for you guys?
Well, I stopped predicting the future when Trump was elected.
Yeah. Well, no predictions. No predictions, because Lord knows, we survived the pandemic. I mean, that was it. The last year, we basically were on survival mode because it kicked everything out from under us. We had books that were just coming out for the very first month when the pandemic hit, and the industry in essence shut down. So we spent the last year just basically surviving, and it wasn't easy. And I think we're going to right now continue to stay in our lane, which is humor, fun, little crazy, and the books that Marvel and DC just for various reasons either don't want to publish or simply cannot institutionally publish. And I'd say, and you guys tell me if I'm right or wrong on this, I'd say probably every month we get a nibble from Hollywood. I mean, they don't all turn out to be anything, but maybe every 3 weeks, I don't know, every month somebody from some Hollywood studio contacts us with some book in mind. And we've sold one, and we've had a lot of actually I think we're on the verge of selling two, and who knows where that will take us in the long haul, and so you never know.
Yeah. Frank, do you guys have anything to add to that?
Yeah, Frank, Tom.
Yeah, no, it was just surviving. We were in survival mode, and now I think the order is just to produce good comics, produce good stuff, and try to, I don't think, the deal is nobody knows what's coming. I mean that's all the time, but usually we can predict, but post pandemic we really don't. we've never done this before, so it's just. This is as the equivalent of like being done with World War II, and we're not even sure we're done with this yet.
I know.
So, and as a business, you can only kind of, just kind of do what you've been doing and waiting to see. The paradigm is shifting, so much. I was talking to the owner of our local comic book store, Comic Zone, and they said if they didn't have the big online store that they did, they would have went under, and it just, that was it. That's what saved them, because there wasn't the foot traffic that they used to get, but they had a very good online store, and people were buying stuff online. You can, that's for sure during the pandemic, and that's and that saved them. That's that was a large portion of their revenue last year in 2020. So,
but even without all this trouble, it's not like we would have been planning to get huge or diversify into lunch meats or something.
Ahoy lunch meats.
Lunch meat is good.
Not bad, yeah.
Do you think we should do lunch meats?
Hey, I think if the time calls for it, who doesn't love that?
It would be quality salami.
It
wouldn't be the salami that gets put out by Tops or Wegmans. It would be real quality salami.
It would be the kind you see the guys in The Sopranos eating.
It would be. It would be really good.
But all of our meats would have
a lot of color.
All of our meats would on some level be funny.
Yes.
It would have to be funny. You would have to eat it, and then you'd swallow it, and you'd give a little giggle out.
Yep. Little burp.
There's definitely something to be said about hearing these stories from all of you, these fascinating industry stories, fascinating story development stories from all of you. Hearing it over Zoom while everything is being recorded, but hearing it live and in person when we're hopefully safely able to, as maybe a barbecue or a meet and greet, something along those lines. Would be awesome. I know Matt and I are in our last months here at IC, but definitely always will remember, some of these experiences. And this has definitely been one that we've been enjoying. I know we have a few more minutes left, and then we're going for a 50-minute panel. What I did want to ask is about the whole comic medium space. So many people have been looking for new forms of entertainment. I know I spent a lot of time, in the pandemic when I was bored at home, just looking for movies to watch. And I know many people, I hope you guys' online store as well as other local stores have been seeing growth due to an infusion of people looking for new stories to read. Do you see, after the pandemic, you foresee a growing amount of people looking towards the comic space for new forms of entertainment?
Should answer.
That's a good question, man. That is the $20,000 question.
You did it. You stumped us.
Yeah, well, I think there's one thing that I find very hopeful is that there's the growth in the youth market of graphic novels. So, if kids start young reading comics, then they're always going to be, they're going to read comics as they get older. And, the libraries have accepted graphic novels more and more, and schools are. It's actually a valid form of reading. And, and some of the classes I teach at SU, we talk about, visual literacy. It was literally reading images. And there's so much of that that's so important. I mean, look at your phone, look at your desktop. I mean, it's covered with icons. It's visual reading. This is what comics is. Comics is visual reading. It's visual literacy. So I do believe that that's part of it. The part of comics becoming more socially acceptable is that we're in a much more visual society than we were. 20 years ago was much more prose. Even if you had a computer, it was all type. Now everything's icons and images and and memes, right? I mean, memes are just like, they put political cartooning out of business. Memes did, so it's. I think that's part of it. We're in a much more visual society,
That you're absolutely right. But you know something? One of the things that I believe separates Hoy is that we have great writers. We really, you put together a great artist and a great writer. And used to be comics were viewed as books for people who are too stupid to read novels. But nowadays, you can put together a creative team and really reach the apex of storytelling, of literature with beautifully drawn art and intelligently written stories. We get tons of submissions from people, and it's just a new superhero is blah blah blah, and we just can't do those things. It's just not there. But when we get something that's brilliant from a writer that we know is really sharp and destined for in our minds greatness, it comes together, and we're just really proud to be involved with that.
Yeah. One thing I don't want to ever lose sight of, though, is the place of junk in the DNA of comics. If you get rid of that entirely, you get rid of most of the fun. As you can see from some, sort of trust fundy, self-pitying, autobiographical comics.
Yeah, I can attest to that. I've seen quite a few of those.
Yeah.
But real quick, this is actually part of an audience question, but I wanted to ask anyway. We only have a few more minutes left. I want to give you guys a chance to plug some Ahoy stuff. Where can people buy Ahoy merch? Hats, shirts, comics, any of that stuff? Do you want to give some links out, shout some social media things out real quick as we wrap up?
We sell on Amazon. That's the quickest and dirtiest way to get it. We do not ship stuff ourselves because it would just become like something we don't want to have to deal with. But Amazon has a section. Just Google us on Amazon, search for us. We have a bunch of T-shirts with Ahoy memorabilia on it, covers of
and logos.
Some of our best books and at those popular Amazon prices.
Oh, is that a floaty in the back that says Ahoy Comics on it?
Yeah. But no, it's a representation of one.
Ah.
Not to be used as a life preserver.
No, not to be at all. It's made of wood, so it's not good.
Not used as a life.
Frank, are you wearing a sweatshirt that says Ahoy Comics on it?
Just a button. Should I just have a button?
That's a button.
So
how about that hat? That's what I thought.
So
there is
some stuff, but probably we will roll out some of these little things when conventions come back. These are mostly things that.
And we have Ahoy bathrobes. We do
have
have Ahoy bathrobes.
Surprisingly, we have not been able to get rid of those. So I mean,
no, they didn't. They haven't worked. We thought we were onto something with bathrobes, but sadly, I don't think the pandemic helped the bathrobe.
Yeah, that's what it was. Pandemic. People
should have. It should have, because people would have been walking around in bathrobes.
They would have been wearing them, right? They would have been. Ahoy sweatpants we probably have done. So.
All right, real quick before we wrap up, social media. Do you guys want to plug or?
It's at Ahoy Comic Mags, MAGS, like for comic magazine.
What sites?
Twitter.
That's on Twitter. I'm sorry. In our brilliance, we've given a different name to every single social media thing we have, and I don't even know them all.
But we have a website, comicsahoy.com, and that
awesome.
That's always good.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This was very interesting, very informative talk. We got to wrap things up, but once again, thank you guys, and
thank you guys for coming. Thank you for making this happen. I know that many people coming in and out, at least a good amount of people coming in, hearing your guys' stories, hearing our questions. Really glad everyone showed up. Thank you, Hart, Frank, and Tom for coming out. I mean, you can find them on social media. You can go to their website, and hey, you can go find their comics and apparently bathrobes on Amazon. So if you want to go buy some merchandise, as I know someone asked before, it's actually much easier than we thought to go find some merchandise. Thank you guys so much for making this happen. And I know Matt and I have had a wonderful time. Hope you in the audience have had a great time. Hart, Frank, Tom, any final thoughts?
Just thank you for having us. We have always loved ITHACON. It is really one of the most enjoyable times. We just have enjoyed meeting students from Ithaca more than any other thing we've done, more than any other Comic Con we have done. Ithaca is our favorite.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right.
Thank you. The best.
Thank you so much. We're going
the best,
yeah, we're going a little bit over time, so
all right,
we got to wrap it up. But thank you guys so much again.
Thank you guys.
Take care.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.